Hi guys, welcome back. So in this video we're going to be learning what each file in the Angular project does and how our project is going to be bootstrapped and how it loads up. Alright, so this was the project that we made in the previous video. So if you guys haven't checked out that video, I would suggest that you check that out. So before we get started, I forgot to mention that we need to download an editor in order to view the code. So the editor that I use is Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is like a lightweight version of Visual Studio, and yeah, just go over and just click on the version that you want to download. So I'm not going to install it again because I already have it in my system. So once you're done with this installation, you can just go back to your project. So this is that folder where we created our project, and just cd into that project sample app. And another pro tip, so if you type in code dot, this opens up that project in Visual Studio Code. So once the project is open, you can see that we have few files here on the left. So all these files are called workspace files. So whatever output your Angular CLI gives you, that's called workspace file. So as you can see here, we have all the source files of our project inside src, and all the e2e folder files are inside e2e. So E2E stands for end-to-end test. So if you want to do any end-to-end tests for your application, then that will go inside E2E. And before we explain the SRC folder, I'd like to go through the other folders outside. So the editor config file. So this file is just to maintain your preferences across different editors. So if in case in future you want to use a different editor, you can still have the same preferences which you used in Visual Studio Code. And the git ignore file. So if you guys are familiar with Git, Git is a repository where we can save our code, where we can upload our project, and we can mention which are the files which we would like to ignore. For example, a common practice is to ignore the non-modules, because sometimes the size of the non-modules folder can be huge. And we'll get to Angular JSON in a while, in a minute. Um, the package.json. So the package.json is where we mention the packages that we want to install for our project. So if there is any specific packages like Bootstrap which you want to install for your project, then you can just mention it in your package.json. So if you see here, we have these packages and the version of that package. And whenever you do an npm install, it comes to your package.json and installs all the packages that you mentioned over here. And every time you do make a change to your package.json, or something gets installed on your non-modules, that creates a package log.json file. This is an automatically generated file, and it's like a snapshot of how your files were, like which were the versions that you were using. And next we have the tsconfig.json. So Angular basically uses TypeScript files, and your browser doesn't understand TypeScript files. So it understands only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So in order for the TypeScript files to be compiled into JavaScript, you have a tsconfig.json. So this configures your TS compiler and how it should be compiled. And lastly, we have the tslint.json. So tslint is a tool that we use so that we can enforce good coding practices inside our application. Um, so this is the configuration for tslint. Now let's head over to angular.json. So inside angular.json, you have these various properties, and I'll be explaining a few of them, the important ones. So first off, you can see that inside the projects folder, we have two projects. One is the sample app, and then we have another one called sample app E2E. So these stand for the SRC folder and the E2E. So we have by default Angular CLI gives us two projects. One is a sample app, which is the main app, and the other one is the sample app E2E. So inside sample app, if you see, we have various properties. So root defines the root directory root of our project, and the source root is where we find the source files, and it's mentioned that it's in src. And if we look at the architect, we can see that there is a property called build. So this is what gets executed when we do an ng build. So in the previous video, if you guys remember, we had to do an ng build in order for the application to run. So whenever we do a build, it comes here and it reads the configuration from here. So if you see here, we have mentioned the index and the main file. So these are the main two files, which I'll be explaining in a moment. Mm, and rest of it's just configuration stuff. So you have the ng-serve over here. So ng-serve again, so I guess in the previous video we had done an ng-serve, not an ng-build. So ng-serve automatically does an ng-build because in the browser target you mentioned to run an ng-build. So so yeah, so it executes your application, it builds your application and gets back. And then we have a test command which would run the test for your application and so on. So let's head over to the src file. And in the src folder, you can see all the files that are responsible for your application. And you can see this folder called app. So inside app, you have app component and app module. So before I explain the rest of the structure, I'll just explain to you what the app component and app module does. So components are like the basic core of your Angular application. So any screen that you're going to design in your web app, it's going to be a component. So a component basically has three files associated with it. One would be a TS file, which is a TypeScript file. One is an HTML file, and one is a CSS file. So the HTML file would represent the page that you're developing. So if you guys remember, the page that we saw when I ran the application, that's this page. So you have all the code over here, and the TS file contains the logic for that particular application. So if you see here, you can see the message welcome to, and if you remember in our project it was welcome to and the name was the name of the project, and that's given by the TS file. So if you see over here, you can see that the title is sample app. So that's how that project was loaded. And coming to the app module, so the module is like the part of Angular app that ties in together every other parts of your application. So every Angular app is supposed to have one module. So this is called the root module and this is called the root component. So this is created automatically for you by Angular CLI.json. So as I said, the module just ties in different parts of your application together so that it can run properly. So if you see here, we declare the component that we have, the app component.ts file. The name is app component. So if you see here, we've declared it over here. So this is like you're registering all the files that we're going to be using. So what the module does is like you're just telling Angular that these are all the files that we want and these are all the files that we're going to be registering. And I'll come to the Bootstrap part in a minute. So let's just close the app folder for now, and let's go to the main and the index file. So if you remember in your package.json file, I had mentioned that the main, no, sorry, not the package.json, the angular.json file, I had mentioned that the main and the index are two important parts of your application. So this is how the whole application gets bootstrapped. So whenever you're doing an ng-serve, it comes over here, it comes to this part, and then it starts building your application, which is this part. And then from there, it picks up the index and the main files. And if I go over and take a look at the main file, which is over here, you can see that in the main file, we have declared this platform browser dynamic. So Angular is not a web only application. You can even develop mobile applications using Angular. But right now, since we are going to run our application on the browser, we are going to be using the platform browser dynamic. And we are going to be using the bootstrap process inside platform browser dynamic. So in the bootstrap process, we mentioned that we're going to be bootstrapping the app module. So as I said, the app module is the first and it's the root module. So that's the first module that gets bootstrapped. And if you take a look inside app module, we've mentioned which are the components that we're going to be using. And we've also mentioned that we're going to be bootstrapping the root component, which is app component. So if we go over to the app component, it's over here. You can see that we have a decorator over here. So app component is a decorator, and the module also has another decorator, ng module. So basically what these decorators do, it just tells Angular that this is a component. So once we reach here from the app module, we have mentioned that the template, the HTML for this particular component is inside app component.html, and the CSS for this particular component is inside app component.css. And another thing to note is that the selector property. So what this says is, what this tells to Angular is that whenever we see this app root selector and the name app root, we're going to be inserting an instance of this particular component. So so just to retrace our steps, if from the app module component, we go to the app component, and inside the app components we see that we have the app component.html and css. So right now Angular knows where this app component is, and it also knows where the html file for that app component is. Now the next main part was index.html, and if you go to the index.html, you guys see that there's an app root selector over here. So if you guys remember, the selector for that component was app root. So since Angular already knows that app root refers to this particular component, so since that name is used, it just creates an instance of this component and inserts it there. So what does it insert? It inserts the HTML. So that's why you see the whole application when you load your Angular project. So that was the entire bootstrapping process. And just to complete this tutorial, I'm also going to be explaining the rest of the files. So the asset folder is all the assets that you're going to be using in your application. So if you have some images which you're going to be using, you can have it over here. The environments folder mentions the different environments and the configurations that we're going to be using for those environments. The browser list is the list of all the browsers. So right now, IE out of the box, IE is not supported. So if you guys want to do that, so it's mentioned here that you just have to remove the not from the last line to support IE. And this is just the icon that pops up, that appears in your in the loaded application. And we've already covered index.html, karma config.json. So this is related to unit testing. So when you guys unit test your application, it comes over here, and this is the configuration for karma. And polyfills is like another file which is related to running your application in IE. So once you remove the not from the browser list file, you have to come over here and uncomment all these lines of code. So this is also related to running your application in legacy browser. Um, then we have the style.css. So this is the global CSS file. So whatever you mention over here, this will be applied throughout your project. And next we have the test.ts. So this is a unit test file for your project. Then we have the tsconfig app.json. So this is again the configuration for how to compile your app. And we have the spec file. So the spec file, any file that has the spec in its name, it's a unit test file. So this is the unit test file for the testconfig.app.json. And lastly, we have tslint.json, which is again the configuration for tslint. So the one that you see on the outside, this is for the global for both the projects, and this is just for the SRC, the sample app SRC. So it does not apply to the E2E project. So yeah, that was my review. Well, I can't say it's a review. So that was the entire bootstrap process explained. So if you guys like this video, please press the like button below, and also if you guys want to see more of anything which you guys like, then just leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll be making a video on that. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.